Okay. Hey everyone. Okay, I think people are just getting started in here. And then I need to pull up the chat box.
Is it okay if I keep my phone, or do you don't want me to keep my phone?
It's up to you.
Okay.
But we can hear you.
Okay. Like right now, you cannot see my phone, right?
No. Okay. And then I need to pull up. All right. Hey everyone. So I'm using this new software, so I'm just trying to get everything set up over here. But please, it would be awesome if you can type in the chat box where you're tuning in from. Oh, perfect. There are the comments. Hey, Randy. That's my sister. She's on.
Hi, Randy.
Keshia says hi. Okay, Mia. So anyone who's currently on the live chat, anyone who just joined, please write in the chat box where you're from. I just also want to make sure that the chat box is working and everything, so that's also why I ask. From Arkansas, hi, Mrs. Stewart. California, Callie in the house. Pam, Chelly, she's one of my really good friends from school. Boston. Cool. I wish there was a way to turn down the sound that this chat box makes. I don't know if it's under settings.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Right? Can you guys hear it? I can hear it. Can you guys hear the sound of the chat box? Because I can hear it. Can you guys hear the sound of the chat box on the live, or is it just I can hear it on my end? Brooklyn, hey. New York, awesome. I was living there right before I moved out here to Paris. Okay, perfect. Keshia, are you playing music?
No, not on purpose.
I don't know how to. Sim is on. Okay. Oh, yes, you guys can hear the noise in the background. Okay, let me try and figure that out. If anyone has used Ecamm before, let me know. Camera overlay is recording. Yeah, I'm actually not sure how to turn it off. Hey, finally made it to a live. Philly in the house. Okay, well, what I'll do right now is I'll just do a quick intro, and then when I bring Keshia on, I'll try and sort out this sound thing. But hey, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tiff. I'm an American living in Paris, and I say that I'm here to share all about my life abroad and the lessons learned during my time here. So I actually moved from New York City to Paris back in August of 2017 and haven't looked back. I've had an awesome time out here and thought it was about time that I had this conversation with you all just about being Black in Paris. I feel like I've gotten this question from so many people, so figured it was about time to really have this conversation. And also, happy Father's Day to all the awesome fathers out there. Thanks for tuning in. We actually weren't even sure if we should have it on Sunday, but glad to see a bunch of you here right now. And yeah, so super excited to have this conversation. I have my really good friend Keshia, who I'm about to bring on to talk this through with me. And just wanted to point out that, guys, I really want this to be a safe space for everyone. Everyone from all backgrounds is welcome. I have friends from all different backgrounds, as does Keshia, and we really want this to be a safe space for everyone to share their thoughts, comments, questions, anything that you have to kind of interact with us in this conversation. So let me bring on Keshia. Second. I've never done this duo live stream, guys, so I'm kind of just learning, but there she is. So everyone, this is my really, really good friend Keshia. We actually met 2 years ago, so I've pretty much known her throughout my entire time living out here in France. And I call her my French twin because we've both had very, very similar experiences, just me in the US and her in France. It's funny, she actually studied abroad in the United States. I, of course, studied abroad in France, so that's one thing. She's French Caribbean. My family is from the United States Caribbean, which is really funny. We both grew up playing the violin. There are just so many things, but I thought that when it came to this conversation that there was no person better than her to discuss this with. So this is Keshia. Keshia, if you want to say a few words while I figure out this sound thing.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you, Tiffanie, for welcoming me to this channel. So I'm the founder of the Virtual Afro Talks. It's a 3-day conference concerning Afro leaders around the world, just to get inspired and to learn from all of these wonderful persons.
Awesome. Okay.
So I'm really glad that we will be talking about Black people in the US and in France as well. I hope, guys, you're ready.
Talking about it all today. Okay. Sorry, guys. Maybe it's under preferences. Audio. Because I feel like everyone can hear that sound and it's not. Oh, there we go. I think I got it. Someone sent us a comment and let's see if it worked.
There is no sound anymore.
Let me see.
There is no sound anymore.
But they haven't commented yet, so let's see. Can someone send us a comment to see if the sound thing is working or not? Wow, we got 45 people in here so far. That's awesome. So for those of you who are just getting on, if you can put in the chat where you're from, that'd be awesome. Hey, perfect. Awesome. Yes. Okay, we're good. All right. Thank you guys for hanging in there. This is my first time actually doing an interview type of live stream. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So we've gotten so many questions from all of you in regards to this topic, so thank you guys so much for sending in your questions. So today we will be talking about the perception of Black Americans and Black French, everyday life questions, so kind of what we just experience on a daily basis, what it's like to be Black in the education system and what they learn out here in France in the education system, the workplace, all things diversity in the workplace, the media, dating. We did have a few questions around dating, the Black community. So in regards to like where they at, where they live in, things like that. So we have a lot to cover today. There are a lot of questions. We're going to try and get through everything today. But if it goes on for too long, we might need to do a part 2. But let's see how far we get. Okay, Atlanta, New Jersey, Alabama, Chicago, New York. Wow, we got a lot of people in here. And as shared, feel free to ask questions throughout the chat. We will, again, try and get through as many as we can. All right, so ready, Keshia?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. So, first bucket of questions is around the perception of Black Americans and Black French. So, the first question is, in Paris, do Black Americans have a different experience than Black French? And another question piggybacking on this is, why do the French like Black Americans but treat Black French people differently? So, I guess I can kick off by saying, for me personally, when I first moved here, I thought that Paris, France was super, super diverse. I always felt accepted, always felt I fit in, and things of that nature. And it really wasn't until I started having these types of discussions with my Black Parisian friends, my Black French friends, that I kind of discovered that things weren't as hunky dory as they seem. So, Keshia, do you want to speak a little bit more on this?
Yeah, so to me, oh, it's weird because I can hear my echo, so I hope you will hear me well.
Yep, I hear you well. I don't think, does anyone hear an echo? I think we're good.
Okay. Um, okay, to me, Black French and Black Americans are treated differently. To me, it's because we idolize Americans in general. So we don't see you guys, for example, you, Tiffanie, if we see that you are coming from the US, it's totally different because we are like, wow, we have this fantasy about New York and the American dream. We think about Will Smith. We think about
kind of like a glorified view.
Yes, so okay. Wow, you're from the US, so we really love American people. So it's different from someone who is just Black, So it's totally different. So that's what I would say.
Got it. And then another question is, when people see you, where do they assume you're from? What type of generalizations, if any, do people often make of you? And for me personally, anytime someone sees me, they immediately assume that I'm French. I mean, well, before I start speaking. They just immediately assume that I'm a French girl. Wherever I am within Paris, they always think I'm French. But what has been your experience?
Well, I would say that I usually get comments that I am from West Africa. First, you need to know that I am French Caribbean.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, for those who don't know, France has territories, French islands called Guadeloupe and Martinique, and they are a part of France. So sometimes when people are like, oh, so you're from West Africa or East Africa, and I'm like, no, or people ask me, okay, where are your parents from? As if I was not French. Sometimes it's hard because I get offended, because I'm like, I've been French for like centuries, so why do you keep asking me that?
Right.
But at the same time, I look like I know some African women from the east part of Africa. So.
Got it. And I think another thing to talk about too is that in America, there's this concept of African American, but here there's really no concept of African French. Even if you were born here, raised here, there's no concept of that. And I always wonder why it's like that, Yeah,
and the truth is funny that you're saying that because even if you grew up here, you're French, your ID is French, you still get the question, but where are you from? So even if I say Paris, they will be like, but where are you from really? You always get that question.
So interesting because, I get asked where I'm from, but when they figure out that I'm from the States, you know what I mean? So it's less about my true background and more about, oh, you're from the States, where are you from? That type of thing. Okay, and then the next question is, do you feel the need to prove your education, financial status, or worth when communicating with others? Like if you're going to the bank, finding an apartment, getting a seat at a restaurant. And I know this is something we kind of chatted about a little bit earlier, but France is a capitalist society. Do you know what I mean? So already people aren't really trying to flaunt what they have or, be above the norm, I guess you could say. And I think, Keshia, you would agree with that, right? So I think because of that, no one's really trying to prove their worth in that way. So personally, I haven't felt that I've had to do that, just based off of the color of my skin. But Keshia, feel free to elaborate.
Well, I will agree with you for going to the bank or finding an apartment, this kind of stuff. I think is quite okay, even if some people may experience racism, for example, when they are trying to find a new apartment.
Do you think so, that they experience racism in the apartment hunt?
Yes, some, how do you say that? Some owners may say, I don't want to have a Black person. This can happen.
No way.
You have to go. Yeah, it's possible, but it's not everyone though. So some people might say it is illegal. You have to know it's illegal. But some owners may say to some agencies, "Oh, but you know what? I don't want to have a black person in my apartment, so try
But
to
why?
find
It's like,
someone."
how do you even justify that? You know?
There is no justification because it's not legal. So they
Wow.
do it even if it's illegal. But I want to say, but going to a restaurant usually is fine. Some restaurant may do say some stuff if you're black, but
But what would they
usually it's still.
say? Like for the restaurant piece, because personally, I haven't experienced like being in a restaurant and feeling like someone might not serve me because of that. But like, have you experienced that, or have friends experienced that?
Not me, but one of my friends to a very chic restaurant in Champs-Élysées.
Okay.
One of my friends experienced it, but it's very a specific kind of restaurant. It's not all the restaurants though. Okay, so
Okay.
it's like one in a million. You have to know.
Okay.
It
Okay.
may happen to you. So
Right.
I don't know where you're from, where you're going to come to Paris. It's usually totally fine, totally perfect. But there are some restaurants, I might say 1%, 0.001% that have a may have discrimination,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right. I understand. And with that said, too, guys, like as we're talking through this, it just popped into my mind, like everything that we're sharing is really just based off of our personal experiences. Like we, of course, can't speak for all of France and all of French and all of the Parisians. So just keep that in mind. We're really just speaking to our experiences in the best way possible to kind of help you navigate this. So definitely keep that in mind because, of course, all people aren't the same. All Black people aren't even the same. So something to keep in mind for sure.
Totally.
Okay. Oh, someone just asked, do you get racially profiled in department stores? Which we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier too, if you want to share your story.
Yes. So, okay. So when you are in a store, you can be, what was the verb again that were used in the question?
Racially profiled.
Okay, racially profiled. Yes, this may happen because I am not a salesperson, but here's sometimes you will see some people coming to you and be like, okay, where is the size 8? And I'm like, okay, I am not a salesperson. Why do you ask?
So they automatically think because you're in the store, you're a salesperson.
Yeah, and that's totally cliche, actually.
Wow. All right, then.
It's not all the time, though, but that happened to me many times.
Okay. And personally, it hasn't happened to me, but interesting to hear that experience from you. So now moving into the more like everyday kind of life questions. So one person asked, I guess for me, did you research beforehand if racism exists in Paris? Did it have an impact on where your location, university, or did it have an impact on your location, university, or job selection? And I thought this was a super interesting question because before coming out here, I actually didn't research racism in Paris. And it's funny because from a very young age, I always knew that Black people lived here. I always knew that there was a Black community. And in part, I feel like it was because, my grandfather took French in both in both high school and in college. My mom took French. So I feel like I was just around it. Not that they're fluent at all, but I just felt like because of that, and we must have had conversations about it when I was younger because for whatever reason, I felt like I just knew that there were Black people who lived in France. And that's honestly why I actually decided to take French as a language when I was in high school and when I was in college was because of that. So I was already like, I know Black people live here, I'm good. And before actually moving here, my friends and I actually did a Euro trip where one of the stops we made was in France. And I saw so many Black people here, you guys. Like, I really, really saw that there was a huge Black community here and just felt comfortable. Like, it really felt like home. I never felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I just always felt very welcomed here. So really didn't have a need to research it. And personally, it did not influence the MBA program that I did. I shared this in a few other videos, but the reason why I even chose this MBA program was because of my mentor, Robin Fisher, who happens to be African American. And she was just kind of like, Tiff, like, this is the program to do if you're interested in fashion, if you're interested in beauty. So race really didn't have anything to do with it. Same with choosing to move to Paris. I guess that's what they mean by location. Okay, we're getting to that one. Someone just said, Tiff, do you think race is prevalent in the US or France? Okay. So next question is, how open are the conversations on racism between friends and people out here in Paris? Are they hush-hush and taboo, passive-aggressive? Are they open to it? What would you say, Keish?
I would say that it depends on where you grew up. Actually, if you grew up, let's say in Paris, you will have a lot of diversity. So you will have people from India, you will have people from Morocco, you will have people from Asia. So actually, I don't see how you can actually not talk to other people. Whereas if you live, for example, in central France, and you're not using that many mixed kind of a relationship, I think it will be harder for you, because that's my opinion, though, okay? Because I feel like you may not see a lot of Black people, or you may not have any Black friends, or not a lot of Black friends. So my opinion is it depends on your background. You know, if you have a lot of diversity around you, you may ask very clearly, like, okay, what's your point of view on that?
Right.
What do you feel? It really depends on personality.
Right. I completely understand. And I think especially now with everything going on, I think people are also very open to having the conversation. Like, I've had conversations about race with my friends out here, especially with everything that's going on. And then next question is, do you feel there's systematic racism in Paris? So this is, I mean, for me personally, yes, I see it so clearly. And we'll talk about this a bit when we get into talking about the workplace. But for me personally, I have seen that, you know, we have a whole like huge Black community, but for me personally, didn't really see a lot of them in my place of work when I was working out here. So I can definitely see for sure that there's something within the system that's kind of keeping people a bit lower, but also would love to hear your perspective as well.
To me, I would say yes. It's hard to say yes as a French person, but I would say yes for many reasons. For example, here in France, we don't talk about the Black history the same way as you do guys in the US. As I said, I am French Caribbean. Okay. So I come from my parents come from the Caribbean. I grew up in Paris. I was born and raised here. But still, when I was growing up as a teenager, as a Black woman, there was no Black history, a positive Black history saying, okay, this is what happened. We don't talk about slavery, for example. You know, the Black people in the Caribbean comes from because of slavery. And we don't talk about slavery, for example.
Yeah.
Now, the same concerning colonization for African people who grew up in France, the same. If you are from Cameroon, West Africa, for example, that means that your parents come from the colonization. You know, they came with a goal. They came in France because French colonized their countries, and, you know, they asked them to come to help France maybe 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And France don't really talk about Africa, but only they start when they stopped colonization. So they don't talk about the fact that Africa was an empire before, you know? So the history is not said entirely. And that's, I would say, my problem.
Okay.
Yes.
It's like the full history of what Blacks have gone through isn't really brought to the surface out here.
Yes. So then some people deny. Some people, you will hear some people say, but slavery never happened, or colonization was a good thing. And you're like, what? You know? So because the story was not said entirely, so because of that, you have a lot of people who don't know anything about colonization, slavery, and the consequences of these topics.
And do you think that plays a factor into systematic racism out here?
Yes, because if you don't know, like Black are not represented well in your history books, for example, in your education, then you will not really see you will not think about them in fashion, you will not think about them in beauty, you will not think about them as colleagues, partners, entrepreneurs in the media. It's an entire system. That's why.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Okay. And so, guys, I see that there are a lot of questions happening right now. I think what we're going to do right now is try and get through the questions that we have in each section, and then we'll kind of try and look in the chat to see what you guys are saying to see if we can balance them both. So, okay, the next question is, do you experience microaggressions? And I mean, for me personally, I have a bit. You know, especially compared to the US, you know, I mean, I've had, you know, someone say to me, oh, yeah, like so someone said to me, like, oh, yeah, you know, we want to add some color to the team, but, you know, she's not as dark as you. And it's like, you know, like little things like that have happened. But I will say there have also been things that have been said that I also had to understand a bit more about the French culture to kind of know what's acceptable here and what's not. Because again, like when it comes to race relations and things like that, I think that different cultures have their standards. And I'll give you guys an example. So when I was getting my MBA out here, we had to present out to like corporate sponsors a lot. And for one of our classes, we were responsible for basically putting a marketing campaign together that we would present out to a leader in an organization. And I remember one group got up to make their presentation, and there was this girl, this black girl, half black, who I'm actually really cool with today. And they were presenting out the marketing persona. So a marketing persona is basically like an avatar for who your audience is, like a person to represent your audience. And she presented out a persona called Nappy Natalie, who was this black girl with natural hair. And when those words came out of her mouth, I was like, oh my God. Like I felt completely offended, because in the United States, if someone refers to a black woman as nappy, it's not okay. It's condescending. It's derogatory. Like that's just not how. That's for us in the States, anyways. That's just not how we're represented. And I remember when they finished their presentation, I pulled her to the side and I was like, "Hey, you said this in your presentation. I was really uncomfortable with it." And she actually had to say to me, like, "Oh my gosh, Tiff, like I'm so sorry. Out here in France, it's different. Like we actually have." She was saying that they actually have an entire nappy movement that's dedicated to uplifting black women in their natural hair. You know, so could you speak a little bit to that? And then I was like, oh, okay, you know, and I was kind of starting to see the differences between French culture and American culture when it comes to things like that. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, to us is not negative at all.
Exactly,
actually,
right.
It was a very great movement where, you know, a lot of women were, it's not that wigs and crochet, I love crochet, are amazing. But I don't know, we had a lot of big movements saying, okay, just enjoy who you are, enjoy your natural beauty, and just be yourself, whether you're at work, with your boyfriend, with your family, enjoy who you are. And so the nappy movement was a very great movement. And every year there is a big movement, a big event concerning natural hair here in Paris. And that's a huge event. So.
Right. And it was actually very interesting just to have that conversation with her. Like, oh, like I see now that this is actually a way to uplift African women, you know, whereas in the States, it's like, I'm sure, you know, no black woman, or at least none of my friends, would want to be called nappy or that their hair is nappy. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting to see the differences there. But when it comes to microaggressions, do you feel like you've experienced anything?
Okay, maybe one, but I just want to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I experienced racism. The black person. I grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of white, a lot of Indian, a lot of. I was maybe the only black, but I cannot say, okay, every day in my life is so hard.
Right, exactly, same, yeah.
That's totally not true. So I truly believe that if you believe in yourself, if you try hard, you will succeed. I truly believe it's really up to your mindset as well. So saying that, I had maybe one or two little aggression. One I remember, I was 10 or 11, and I was joining a new school, a new school,
Yep.
because I moved to where I live now in the suburbs of Paris. And the first time she used to be one of my friends, and she said to me, "Okay, you're a student, so you're intelligent as a black person." And I was shocked because you see at 10 saying that to one of your friends, because
Right.
she was one of my best friends actually.
Yeah.
But, we were talking for like maybe 10 or 20 days, and she said, "You're intelligent as a black woman," and I was like, I was shocked,
Because it's basically like she was trying to say, like, you're pretty smart for a black girl, basically.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I've never heard that. So to me, it's really, it's kind of shady. Tell me
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
think of
It's
it.
like, and that's the thing. It's like, because I'm similar to you. It's like I can't say that I've experienced like outright racism, like in the United States or here, And I grew up in a predominantly white environment. You know what I mean? And even then, it's like, yes, like there were little things that happened in school where, like, I remember a teacher stopped the class and was like, "How do you feel to be the only black person?" And it's like when you're a kid, especially because you're just trying to fit in, it's like you're not trying to stand out and things like that. Or I remember my English teacher in high school, we were about to read To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a book it's read amongst a lot of high schools, but of course I was the only black person in the class. And I remember after class, he pulled me to the side and pointed to the N-word and was like, "Is it okay if I say this out loud?" And it's like, like, because it's like at that age, you haven't even really experienced that word, especially if you're in a predominantly white environment. Like, I kind of feel like that would have been more of a question for my parents. It's like, I feel like you experience like little things like that growing up, or what I experienced growing up, but no really outright racism. Do you know what I mean? And I can say the same for here. And I know that there was a question around, do you feel like, I think someone said, yeah, Tiff, do you think racism is more prevalent in the US or France? And guys, keep in mind that right now we're really, really talking about Paris, just because that's just the experience that we've had, has been in Paris. And Paris is a lot different from other parts of France, so definitely keep that in mind. But I did want to say that because, again, it's kind of hard to judge, because I feel like even the experiences that we both have, they're not really outright racism. It's more of these kind of little subtle comments, I guess you can call them, microaggressions, that we do experience from time to time, but no like outright racism, right? Would you agree on that, Keish?
I would.
Okay, cool. So next question. So now, guys, we're going into education, but let me just check to make sure if anyone has any like everyday. Sorry, guys, there's so many questions here. I might have to go through them all afterwards, but I'm going to try and do both, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's get into education. So, one, do you find native Parisians are well educated on Black history, or do you find yourself having to explain nuances and perspectives? And then another person asks, why aren't the French taught about French slavery? And I feel like you talked a bit about this earlier, but if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think, as I said, unless you're very close to Black people, it's super hard to know about Black history here in France, because we don't really teach people, and I'm not talking about only Black people. We don't talk about what happened in the past centuries concerning our story.
Okay. And then another person asks, why don't French universities have an ethnic studies department? Which I thought was a really interesting question, because it's like, for me, well, I went to an HBCU, so I went to Howard University, but I think that's also very different. Like out here in France, you don't have historically Black colleges and universities, exactly. But I know for me, of course, at Howard, we did have an African studies program and an African American history class and things like that. So what has been the experience out here in France?
Okay. First of all, you need to understand the system here in Paris and in France in general. We don't believe in race as you believe in race in the US. I don't know
Okay.
if it's, for example, we when we go and check our like I know that when I went to the US, I had to say that I was a black person. You know, when you go through the border, you have to say, okay, I am black, I'm Latino, I am mixed, I am white, you know. So you know who you are, or you know which box you checked, right? Here in France, uh, you will never have to say that you are black or you're Latino on your ID. It's impossible, and actually, it's illegal to actually make some statistics and to actually broadcast them. You know, you can maybe the government may have some data on that, but you cannot share this data. So it's the same concerning education. You will never have, okay, something based on race, because to us, actually, as French people, it may be hypocrite, but I'm still going to say it. We believe that, okay, everyone is the same, white, black, Latino, Indian, we are all the same people, and we are all under one republic. Okay, that's how we believe the society. So you will never be like, okay, I am black, I'm only talking to black people. That's impossible here. You know, we believe, maybe that's why we have some problems now today, because we are going to ignore, you know, races. We are going to ignore your ethnicity, your history, just to be under the same republic and the same story or history, which is the French white history, you know. So it's a way of thinking. We don't believe in communities and all that. It's really, we are one bowl, same bowl.
Which is so different, because I remember thinking, you know, why isn't there a true like Black Lives Matter community and things like how there is in the United States? You know what I mean? I feel like it's a lot different here, where you guys don't really have that type of yeah, I guess you could say community. And it's funny because, you know, I always see the French as being very passionate people speaking up and all of this stuff. But I think when it comes to some things, you just don't really see a specific community getting together to be vocal about a cause like that.
Yeah. And number two, I would also say that here in France, you have different kind of communities. You have the African people coming from Africa, coming from Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Benin Republic, coming from Senegal, and you also have people coming from the Caribbean. Okay, and these are different countries and different islands. So coming to unite all together, and I'm not even talking about religion, because some are Muslims, some are Christians, some are animists. You see, so it's super hard to unite, to come together and be like, Black Lives Matter, okay, but you are different. Like, I'm a Caribbean person. My parents grew up in islands, and living in island is not Senegal, for example. You know?
Yeah, but I think it's interesting though, because it's like, even though these people come from all of these places, we're still all Black. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the same. It's the same in the States. It's like there are people from Africa, Caribbean, like people come from everywhere. But I think for us in the States, it's like we're maybe more willing to all come together to fight for that cause, regardless of what our background is, whether it's African, Caribbean, whatever. Do you think that that's different out here?
Maybe, and you know, as I said, we ignore race here in France. So we don't really talk about race. So now is the first time, I mean, in my entire life, that we talk about race like that. We have never speak up. We have never said, you know what? I used to have a racist person around me. It's the first time that we talk, actually, about our generation. Is the first time. And we experience some stuff. Microaggressions, maybe a little racist comment from now and there. But it's the first time that I'm saying what I'm saying.
Out loud. Yeah. And that's interesting, right? And it's funny because like even me talking to some of my friends from back home, I mean, it was the first time that they were even really hearing some of the experiences that I had had in high school and things like that, you know, because it's sometimes not something that you talk about very publicly, but it's like, yes, microaggression, like, yes, we do experience microaggressions, which of course is a form of racism, you know what I mean? Whether it's out here or in the States, it's like it's true, those things don't happen. I mean, sorry, those things do happen, you know. I just think that they're not always made super public in this way, and I think that because of what's going on, it's kind of made a lot of us speak up and share our stories so that people can really understand what we go through, which is another reason why I wanted to have this talk with you. Okay, cool. And then next question under education is, someone says, I've heard so many stories of Black students forced to go to training school rather than regular high school. How is this still a thing? So do you want to speak a little bit about this so people can kind of understand like the system here in France and why it is that way?
Okay. So training school versus what is the other
So they called it training school versus regular high school, which I guess is more like the business track, if you will.
Okay, yeah. So the regular school here in France is the road to excellence. Okay, that's the road that you take if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be in science, if you want to be in business. That's where you will have the more money, actually. Okay, so when you choose that kind of high school, you are almost sure to be okay in life. Okay, I'm putting that in quote because that doesn't mean you will succeed, especially nowadays. But just to give you an example, but training school is more if you want to be a hairdresser, is more technical, is what you use with your hands. Okay, so if you want to repair maybe repair a bed, if you want to, to do things with your hands, actually. Okay, so it can be if you want to be a beauty person, if you want to learn how to do makeup, these kind of things. Okay. So more people, that happened to two of my friends who did a business school. So I feel very, very close to that topic. The women didn't even look at the grades, the counselors. They just say, okay, you are who you are. So I think you have to go to training school to be a hairdresser. And these women, these are my friends, they never say they love to braid, okay? But the women said, okay, you need to go to that kind of school.
Because they're Black.
Yes, because they are Black. And that happened to many women. And, well, that's not a good story, but that happened to some of us maybe 10, 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Still, as Black people, I think we can still, and it's still possible because they did it, to try to inform yourself, to go to conference, because a lot of free stuff are happening here in France, to go and try to find the right solution for you or your kid. Okay, so it's not an excuse, but it's an experience to share.
Yeah, no, and definitely. And it's like, I feel like just as Black people in general, it's like we all kind of have to make our own way because we know that we're never going to get a handout or anything like that. Not that we want them, but it's like we're all tasked with making our own way with whatever it is that we want to do in this system. Okay, moving on to the workplace. So, 1, how is the work dynamic? Was your work team quite diverse? How was it being Black in the workplace? So me and Keshia both have had very different experiences because we both worked in very different industries. So Keshia, do you want to chat first? Maybe say like the industry that you worked in and what you've experienced, and then I can chat too.
Okay. So I am, for those who don't know me, I am a sales engineer. So I used to work to sell things like in IT, in telecommunications, sorry. So I was in a predominant masculine environment, but with a lot, that's not Tiffanie example, but with a lot of Black and Arabic and Moroccan people, okay? So I didn't feel like I was the only one. I was not the only one. I was more the only woman, but not the only Black person. I was surrounded by a lot of diversity So no, I didn't feel that I was the only one in my field. And then I moved to a Pan-African ecosystem. So I used to work for a magazine from Africa. So actually a lot of, again, African people, Caribbean people, Moroccan, Tunisian people. So I didn't feel the difference actually.
Because you were around. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And when I say Black people, I don't mean people like me. I had a manager who was Black. I had directors who were Black. So I grew up. Even my how do I say that? The deputy CEO of my last company was Black. So it's just to tell you, I had a lot of role models who were Black.
So it sounds like there were Black people at all different levels within the work environments that you found yourself in.
Yeah, even my mentor in my first job in telecommunications, she was Black. My assistant was Black. We were two Caribbeans in the same team. I mean, I cannot say like, oh my God, I didn't have any role models.
Right. I see. Cool. Well, my experience was very different than Keshia's. So I worked in the beauty industry out here for an international company. I had an awesome time. I learned so much. But to be honest with you guys, and something that I shared in my video about working out here is that I was the only Black person on the team. And also only the only American on the team. So the team was predominantly French. And in terms of the dynamic, like it was pretty cool. I got along with most everyone on the team. But I'm not going to lie, guys, it kind of did feel like I was there to check a box or fill a void or kind of be that diverse face on the team, if you will, which I'm sure a lot of us experience, of course, in the United States. And I feel like sometimes that held more value than what I could bring, what I could offer, like my potential, kind of, if that makes sense. And I know me and Keshia have had this conversation a lot, but I do think that this happens in the United States too, similar as how it happens here, that it's like sometimes you feel like, was I really hired just to kind of add diversity or what? So that was my experience out here. But again, I got along with everyone on the team. I can definitely say that. I had an awesome experience and definitely learned a lot, but there were things when it was kind of like, kind of maybe just felt like I was there to check a box at times. And Keshia, I don't know if you have anything else to share on that, but.
Yeah, I think it happens in so many ways. You can be actually hired because you're the only woman. It can be that you're the only Black person. It may happen in so many ways, actually. But the truth is, I'm talking for people who are in HR or colleagues or whatever. Okay, you may be hired for this reason, but next, you still need to understand, okay, who is this person? What is her potential? What is your potential, Tiffanie? Who are you? What are you able to do? Because maybe you were hired here, but you deserve to be there. It's super important to see the person not just as a box, but still somebody who can level up and
exactly. That you want to help grow and develop and things like that. And I think this is an interesting part of the conversation too, because it kind of shows the difference in diversity in different industries, right? Because my boyfriend actually works in finance consulting and kind of not the same as what you do, because it's more of like consulting, IT projects and things like that. And there are a lot of different people on his team. Do you know what I mean? Like he had a housewarming party and it was like a melting pot, like in his apartment, because there were people from everywhere, So it's like I think you kind of definitely see maybe the industries where people are more so ready to hire Black people or diverse people, because again, at my job, yes, I was the only person on my team, and even within the entire organization, there weren't that many of us. And I think when I first got there, I was like, whoa, because there were so many Black people in France that I was seeing. You know what I mean? So maybe it's a little bit different. Again, this is like the luxury beauty industry, but again, I think it's just kind of different in terms of what industry you find yourself in.
What I want to say also, I think that the frustration here in France comes from the fact that you don't see us in media concerning this powerful roles. I don't know if you get me. For example, here in France, you don't see us on television. There are like one or two hosts that are black. You know, the same concerning TV shows. If it's from the US, okay, you will see black people, but except on Netflix, you will not see us. So for this reason, it's always about someone who is an immigrant and a woman, or the black woman is a prostitute. We never see us. We never see us like being a lawyer or being a judge or being a teacher, like simple roles that we feel on our daily basis. So that's the problem. I think it's not the fact that we don't have the roles. The thing is, we don't see these roles on media, and media is power.
Right. You're absolutely right. Media is power. And it's like, that's why, especially with all of this going on. And I know that we've discussed the Pull Up for Change movement. Guys, I'm sure you're familiar with the Pull Up for Change movement, where Jackie Ayanna, I was talking about you last time. So Jackie Ayanna is a huge beauty blogger who basically was sharing, black beauty blogger, who basically was saying that, a lot of us black women as young girls learn to love ourselves through makeup, right? Through what we saw on TV, and this is more so in the States, through what we saw on TV, through the beautiful advertisements and things like that. And her point was, why are we seeing, in America, is why are we seeing these advertisements and things like that, but we're not, for the companies that really want to promote diversity, but we're not seeing it within the organization itself. And she actually tasked companies with basically giving them 72 hours to release the demographics of their organizations. So at the corporate level, how many black people do you have? At the director level, how many black people do you have? At the board members, how many black people do you have? So that we could really get a sense for who is within these organizations. And it was interesting because on the Pull Up for Change account, I was noticing that all of these companies only showed their US numbers, right? And for me, having worked in the beauty industry in Europe, I was like, now, wait a second, like, where are the other numbers? Because I know that there's such a strong population out here. And I think this kind of goes into what we were talking about the data, and out here, you just don't really have access to the data on who's really here, right? And what the demographics are, what their ethnic background is, and things like that. Would you say the same?
We cannot say, as I said, there is no data that can be shared because it's illegal. It's because of the Second War, what happened with the Jews, because we knew how many Jews were in France and where they were living and all that. And France and Germany are very frustrated concerning that topic. So data cannot be shared, and we're working on that right now. I know that they are discussing that, but it cannot be shared at all. It's so taboo.
Yeah, which is so interesting. Yeah. And then a few more other questions under the workplace. So someone asked, do you feel comfortable or professional wearing your natural hair? And for me, this isn't my real hair, guys. My real hair is underneath. But I was totally fine with this hairstyle. I worked in the beauty industry, a very creative industry and things like that. I was always totally fine. Like, if anything, people loved it. Like, I would get stopped even at work, like, oh my gosh, I love your hair. How do you do your hair? And things like that. So I personally was completely fine with my hairstyle. What about you?
Me as well. Actually, I've never had any problem concerning my natural hair. Sometimes I change a little bit, I do crochet or box braid, but usually it's totally fine. Actually, people are more concerned concerning my work. They are more concerned about if you wear a suit or if you wear, if you dress up very formal.
So more about the way you dress versus the hairstyle.
Yes.
Okay. And then, oh, wow, guys, we're already like an hour in, girl. Listen, I know. I'm going to try and get through these other ones quickly so we can kind of get to some of the questions in the chat. But there's another question. In Paris, do you find there are many Black-owned businesses? And I loved this question because, in my perspective, yes, absolutely. So if you guys follow me on Instagram or have seen my YouTube videos, you know that I'm a huge foodie. Like, I love, love, love to eat. I'm always going out to different restaurants, and I personally have come across so many Black-owned restaurants out here. Like so many of my favorite restaurants are Black owned. You got Jaja, you got Gumbo Yaya, you got Mama Jackson's, Table Métis, which is an amazing African restaurant that me and my boyfriend actually went to on Valentine's Day. Sunday in Soho, which is actually owned by a Black American, so an African American. But I've personally have discovered so many Black owned restaurants out here that I absolutely love. And Keshia, maybe you can speak about Black-owned businesses because I think in your virtual Afro talks there were a few Black entrepreneurs, right?
Yes, that was one of the goals as well at the virtual Afro Talks, so a 3-day conference to show that there are Black excellence here in France as well. Mm-hmm. So the idea was to share and to show people that actually there are a lot of Black people, CEOs, GPT directors, entrepreneurs in the beauty industry, everywhere. So, for example, I highlighted a woman who is a journalist at BET, France.
Yes, I remember watching that one. That was awesome. Yeah.
And the idea was to say, okay, you know what? She exists. Maybe you don't show her that much, but she exists.
Yeah.
And other people the same. I had a guy who is in IT as well, or in artificial intelligence as well. Mm-hmm. People in finance, people, every kind of, even you were on the virtual Afro Talks. Is a way to show that it's a way to show that everyone deserve. I put people from also like business coach, fashion business coach as well. So it was a way to say, okay, in every sectors, you have Black people who can succeed.
Exactly. And I love that. I love that you have that initiative. It's awesome. I hope it comes back and you do another one. Okay. Next question. So now we're going into the media, which I know we were kind of talking about before, but we can loop it back in. So one person says, why is the standard Parisian we see in media white, skinny, when there are many women of color in Paris? And why are there so few Black people in French media? And I thought that this was a very interesting question because I actually earlier this week had a conversation with a business coach around, what is the ideal of French beauty, because in her eyes too, she was like, it has to be more than, this white girl with red lips and brown hair that we see all the time in TV and things like that. And I was kind of explaining to her, like, listen, I get stopped because people think I'm French, you know what I mean? So there's definitely more to it than that. But if you want to speak a bit more on that, Keshia?
Well, I'm gonna say that I know women. Okay, her name is Jacqueline Ngo MP. Okay, she did a little guy, a touristic guide called.
Did you say a little guy?
Sorry.
Wait, did you say she dated a little guy?
No, a little guide.
Oh, I thought you said. I literally thought you said she dated a little guy. I was like, dang, Keshia.
No. Sorry.
She made a guide, like a little guide.
Yeah, a guide to show that there is a little Africa here in Paris, and people are always surprised, like, wow, there are a lot of Africa here in Paris, and a lot of American comes just to see the fact that there is Africa in Paris too, and she is a member of the virtual Afro Talk speakers. But it's just to say that sometimes it's because we don't know the story. How many people say, if you knew in the comments below, if you knew that French has French territories all over the world. Now, say if you knew that, because most of people don't know. So we will go with stereotypes, like it's supposed to be a white girl, but
and especially if that's all that they're seeing in the media, right?
Yeah, but it's because what we ignore the history of France, which is we have a lot of immigration, the same as in the US. We have a lot of Asian, we have a lot of Black, we have a lot of Caribbean, we have a lot of African, we have a lot of Moroccan, and it's because of history. We are not there just like that. It happened because of history, and we need to understand that this history is true.
Right. Listen, tell them, girl.
Yeah, it's true. And when I say it's true, I mean that there is a history, there is a reason why we're here and not in the Caribbean now. It's because of globalization, it's because of our past. Many things happen, and we are the results of all of these waves of immigration.
Right.
Yeah.
And can you speak a bit on why there are so few Black people in French media?
Wow. As I said before, I think it's because, as we said, actually, race is not one of the box that we checked. So we're not going to, okay, we need 18% of Black people here.
Right.
Or we need, no. So we will choose you only if you're super, super excellent, but we will not put, it's not, how can I say this? It is not, or it was not in the idea of people who control media.
Right.
So the idea was to do what they had in mind. And now maybe thanks to this movement, maybe things will change because they will not have the chance. But right now, I think it's because of how can I say the measures, the different measures that the policy that the different channels decide to see or not to see. To represent the society, the French society well, because it's not only about Black.
Right.
I think it's the same for Asian.
It's about everyone. It's just, and I think, it's about everyone having a voice, right? Like all cultures having a voice, whether you're Black, brown, whether regardless of your background. I think it's like, why aren't all of these voices shown, right?
Yeah, there are a few. I think I can name maybe one Indian woman on the entire French TV. So there is no Indian, no Asian, no. So lack of diversity.
Yeah, that's a huge lack of diversity. Okay, cool. And then third question is cultural appropriation huge in France too? Are Black people being erased from music genres, books, etc.? This is such an interesting question because, of course, this is really big in the United States. And it's interesting. My friend just posted an article I was telling you about how Beethoven is actually Black, right? Of course, he's German. He's not French. But just talking about how they completely erased his identity and turned him into a white person. I mean, it's like, come on. But do you think that exists here in France?
Sure. Do you know Alexander Dumas?
I've heard that name. Why have I heard that name?
The name is French, is Les Trois Mousquetaires. I don't know the translation in English, but it's super famous. Okay. I think you know it as well.
Okay. Say the name in French again.
Alexandre Dumas.
No, but you said something before that. Or no, maybe.
Les Trois Mousquetaires.
Okay. Keep going, though. I know, I'm trying to see if it rings a bell.
Okay. Actually, this guy was Black. Okay. He was a genius. He did a lot of things. And a lot of movies are about him. But in all of these movies, you never see him Black. Yes. So it's super hard because most people, and it's a classic here in France, most people read him, but I think nobody knows, or few people knows. Maybe the elite and some Black people know that he was Black.
Wow.
So, yes.
Okay, so it does exist out here in France.
Yeah, it does exist, and also in fashion. I would like to say something concerning fashion. You see what I'm wearing? It's not from Africa, but there is a lot of fabrics that look like, I did it in Africa or somewhere. but actually they use the print and then they sell it, but actually the real money doesn't go back to Africa. They use inspiring, like, okay, let me use Queen Bee as an example.
Yes, bring on Beyonce, girl. I'm here for it.
Okay. She's a great example of how things are supposed to be done. For example, she wanted something very Black, African. She hired someone to choose a designer who could do the entire clothes, and she chose, her name, I think, is Sarah Diouf, from Senegal, and they pay her, to do all the different clothes for her, dancing and stuff. And I say, yeah, Beyonce, great. But most brands, what they do is they go to the continent or they go on Instagram. They see, oh, this fabric is great. They copy and they just do as if, these came from their imagination. But the truth is, no, they use the fabrics. And then African people come and be like, these are my fabric from Cameroon, or this is from Senegal. Yeah. So the money doesn't go back to African artists. And that's my problem.
I see.
Yeah.
Clear on that, girl. Clear on that. Okay, so let's get into dating, because there were a few questions around dating. So someone asked this question: why are Black couples socially unacceptable in France versus white couples, as they have noticed that French white people always expect Black people to date a white person? And I personally don't agree with this, and it's not something that I personally experience. Like, my boyfriend is Black, your boyfriend is Black, and I completely feel accepted. I wouldn't say that Black couples are not accepted here. I do see a lot of mixed couples, which is beautiful. I think it's beautiful that everyone's mixing and things like that. You know what I mean? So I personally haven't experienced this, but Keshia, I don't know if you can speak to it at all.
Well, I think we accept all the kind of couples here in France. There is no, I cannot say, okay, you're Black, they don't expect you to be with a Black person. That's not true at all. My boyfriend is from Cameroon, and everything is okay. But I need to say something, to be very honest. I'm very honest in this.
Yes, please bring on the truth.
I would say that sometimes white women, or the white men for Black women, can be seen as a sign of success.
That like a Black. So like, wait, are you saying like in a Black man's mind, he might see a white woman as being success, like a sign of success, or the other way?
I would both ways. Like, for example, you're a Black woman, and you see, some people see the white man as a success, and the same for Black men. They might say, okay, I'm going to choose that white woman because she might be easier, she might be more gentle, she might be more easy to deal with, because some men believe that Black women are very too strong, too loud, with too much character and stuff like that. So it really depends. And we see that a lot with soccer players, when they have a lot of money, when they are millionaires. If you look at at all their girlfriends, most of them are white, So I think that, but I know a lot of Black men who choose Black women. So it really depends.
It really just depends. Yeah, I think it's kind of like a personal question. Like, right? Like, what do you prefer? Because of course in America too, there are interracial couples. And of course, I was living in New York, so it was a lot more diverse than maybe like other areas. But, I think that you do see same race couples, I guess you could say, here, and you do see interracial couples, right? But I have personally noticed, though, that like a lot of times in advertising out here, they do advertise like a Black woman with a white husband, or a white woman with a Black husband. Like, I have seen that a lot on advertisements out here, more so than what I was seeing in the States, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's happening a lot. Like, people fantasize about Black men, like white women. Sometimes they're like, yeah, they are strong, and vice versa. Some I saw a lot of that. So in that topic, I would say we're kind of good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So now moving on to, and this is kind of like our last bucket of questions, guys, and then we'll try and take a quick peek at the chat. We don't want to keep you too long. But now moving into more of like the Black community support system organizations and things like that. So the first question is, what's it like trying to find a Black support system in Paris? One to help you manage family, school, and other things similar in nature. And this was actually one of my subscribers asked this question because I think he's moving, or he's thinking to move out here with his family and kind of wants to understand what would that look like? Like, would I have like a support system that could kind of help me with these things? And would love your perspective, because I can say for me, like, I moved out here like by myself, single, no family, no friends, nothing. So I kind of had to create for myself. And I do have awesome Black French friends out here, but also I have friends out here from all other races too. And when I was out here, I can't say that I was just zoned in on finding a Black community. Do you know what I mean? I feel like even how we met was literally like insane, like divine timing. And I guess this is the perfect time to share how we met. But guys, it was crazy. Like, so I was taking the train to Chateau d'Eau, which is the area of Paris where I get all of my Black hair salon and products and things like that. And I say that this is divine timing because I initially had taken the wrong train and then had to get on the right train. So there was like this little like pause. And of course, at first I was like, oh my God, like I got on the wrong train, And then when I finally got off at the stop, Keshia comes bopping around to me like all nice and smiley, like as she is. And she just starts speaking to me in French. And I was like, girl, I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're saying. And she was like, oh, you speak in English. I was just wondering, like, I love your hair. How do you do it? And I was just like, oh, well, I'm actually on my way to the beauty store. I can just show you what products I buy if you're interested. And literally from that moment on, I feel like we were just such good friends. Like, you were like, oh, you're out here by yourself. If you ever need anything, let me know. And I feel like we just have been friends ever since that moment, right?
Yeah, and I don't do that with a lot of people. Like, you were the only one. I don't know why. I felt like, because I experienced, the US and the gentleness, the hospitality of the American people, I was like, okay, she seems to be nice. If you need anything, if you are young, if you are by yourself, I was like, okay, if you need anything, I know how it feels to be a stranger alone.
Because you've had that experience, yeah.
Yeah, so I say, okay, that's why. And the truth is, I didn't know we would be that closer.
Right? Isn't it crazy? Like, same, it's like, who would have known that we'd be this close like 2 years later, right? But I say this to say, guys, like, I feel like the Black friends that I've had out here, I've met so randomly. Like, during my first year here, I actually found myself in a crew of Black Americans who were living out here because one of my really good friends who was working in LA had an interview with one of them and was like, oh, my friend Tiff, she actually lives in Paris. You two should connect. And she introduced me to her friends, and that was it. So that's kind of how I met a lot of my friends out here, is just through like random circumstances. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't really sought out like a Black community or organization, but maybe you can speak a little bit to that, Keish. Like, if you feel like there are any communities or organizations out here that support in that way of kind of like building a network within the Black community.
First of all, I need to say that here in France, again, let me say it again, we don't organize ourselves based on community. You will never say, okay, I live in the Black neighborhood, or this is the Latino area, or this is the Asian part. You may have some tendencies in some parts of the Paris region, but that's not the way of thinking here, okay? So that's number one. It's very, very important to understand that's not our thing. Two, if you really need to have support, like Black communities or association or organization or lobby. Do you say lobby in French?
Yep. In English, yeah.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I used to join. I used to be a part of one of them, and you have a lot of Black networks for African diaspora, for Caribbean diaspora, for even Black, for African American as well in Paris. So you will find a lot of association and groups, and don't hesitate to use like Meetup. You know
Yeah,
the
meetups.
the
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, you have a lot of things on Meetup, for example, so you can have a lot of support through that way and join and meet new people if you really need to have a Black system, a Black support system.
Okay. Cool, cool, cool. And then next question is, well, and then someone asks, why is Paris so racially segregated? Why are the banlieues, which are like the suburban areas in Paris, so racially segregated? And what are your thoughts on this? Like, for me personally, out here in Paris, like, I never feel like I'm the only Black person in a specific area. You know what I mean? Like, I've never felt like I'm the only one, like, regardless of where I find myself. Like, yes, there may be more or less of us, but I never feel like, oh my gosh, it's only me. Or, oh my gosh, this area is only for white people or only for this. You know, I will say that there are certain neighborhoods, like, for example, Chateau d'Eau, where a lot of Black people here go to get their hair done, Black braiding products and things like that, because it is kind of home to those shops, you know, that we need to go to for our hair. But other than that, I really don't see, personally, just from what I've experienced, I really don't see like massive like segregation. So do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Okay. There is no segregation, but you can see some tendencies. And you can explain that because of history. Okay. As I said, everything can almost be explained by history. A long, long time ago, when people were coming in France as immigrants, okay, so when they were coming sometimes to work for the first time, the policy of the city would be, okay, you're African, you go to that city. You're Asian, you go to that part. And sometimes people gathered, you know, in the same buildings, the same areas, the same neighborhood. But it is not because of segregation, it's because of history. People went there and then their children went there and then their children stayed there. And actually is how, you know, and then you say closer to your parents because then you have your own children. Right. And then, you know, the grandparents want to see their grandchild. So it's a kind of cycle. You started with only yourself, then you bring your spouse, then you have kids, then you have grandkids. And at the end of the day, your suburbs becomes your, you know,
like your hub, like your, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And number two, I want to say that sometimes we feel like it's segregated, but I know, for example, as I said to you before, I know a lawyer. He has a law company in the Champs-Élysées, okay? He's African, and he lives just next to the Champs-Élysées. And I don't know a lot of white people who can say that, and a lot of Black people are ambassadors, you know, are in politics as well here in France. So maybe sometimes we don't know them, but they exist. Yeah. They are very, you cannot see them on media for sure, but if you pay attention, you will see them.
Okay, cool. So now let me take a quick look at the chat. Oh my gosh, you guys have been popping in this chat, man. Let's see. Okay. Oh, my family's on. Mom, Dad, Randy. Hey, guys. Let's see. You guys, I'm like really just going to try and quickly scan this because I don't want to keep you guys on for too long. Okay, we answered that. So someone says the discussion about race in France is very taboo, even for people who were raised in Paris, which I think is kind of what you talked about a little bit, right? Because of the history. So someone asked, can you speak more to how Black people of Africa and Black folks from America are treated? I have heard people from Paris dog whistle, la Marseillaise. Do you know? I don't know what Marseillaise. Do you know what that is? Or maybe I'm saying it incorrectly.
It is our national hymn.
I mean, I feel like we kind of covered like Black French versus Black American. Oh, so someone asked, is there a lot of diversity at the universities? Which is an interesting question. And for me personally, so my program was very, very international. So like there were people from India, there were people from China, there were people from Korea, Italy, France. It was very diverse. I was the only Black person in my program, but I know that the year before that, there was like a handful of Black girls who were there. So it's like my program specifically was very, very diverse. But Keshia, I don't know if you want to speak to yours.
Okay, I did a 2-year diploma before going to a business school. And in this school, you had a lot of white, Black, etc.
Everyone, right?
Yeah. Concerning the business school is different because I left Paris. So I left the diverse and I went to school in Tours in central France. Okay. So it's 1 hour from Paris and you have a lot of castles. It's a beautiful area. So if you want to visit, it's a wonderful city to visit. And there I think we were like 4 up to between less than 10 or less than 10 Black people.
Okay.
Out of 500, my promotion in my city, we were 500 for my year, you know, and out of that, we were less than I would say 10, less than 12.
That was the same with my boyfriend because he studied in Lyon, and there were like a handful of Black people for his master's program.
Yes, yeah. So few Black people.
Let's see. Okay. Someone said, what is it like when you use public services? Like when you go to the doctor, do you feel like the medical professionals take you seriously when you talk about health concerns? And this is a really great question because, Keshia, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they do say, for example, the death rate of African American women when they give give birth is a lot higher than those of white women because, and this is just kind of like what I've heard, because doctors don't really listen to them when they say that there's a problem or I'm in pain or things like that. I personally have never experienced anything like that out here. Like I've never felt like if I say something to a doctor that they're not listening to me or that they don't think what I'm saying is true. Personally, I haven't experienced that, but have you experienced that at all? No?
No, not at all, not at all. So I cannot say this. Maybe there are some statistics that will say the opposite, but my mom is a nurse. I have a lot of nurse and I would say doctors in my family, even in the Caribbean. Actually, you have a lot of Black people in the health system, you know, as nurses, as doctors or head of services here in France. So I don't feel that we are unheard.
Okay. Yeah, I knew.
That's not.
And it's interesting because in the States there are statistics that show that what I was sharing about like African American women, like during birth, that they have a higher death rate because of things like that. Let's see. Someone said, "You are sweet, Tiffanie. I would have lost my ish." I'm not sure which one that was about, which topic that was about. Let's see. when you're in school, did your teachers make assumptions about your capabilities? But I think that that's kind of what you talked about the whole, how sometimes like when you're in high school, counselors based off of your skin color might have you do the training program instead of,
Yeah,
yeah,
me it was kind of the opposite, so I cannot really say I was
exactly.
kind of a student, so I cannot really say it was more the opposite. Like they pushed me when I was in high school and middle school, so no.
Right.
Oh, but well, okay. Anyway,
Oh, if you want to share something, you can as I'm looking through the questions, if you have something to share.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me share something. So as I said, I was in business school in Tours, so central France, which is not in Paris. And one of my marketing managers with some of my friends, like we were like three black women and one Moroccan woman. And the marketing teacher said to us, because we were not really listening, okay, but we more like knew that we understood marketing.
Mm-hmm.
He to us like he was waiting for us to give back the papers that we needed to do so that he could give us a bad grade. So we were like, okay, so we really need to work on our group projects so that we pass the exam and all that. And then we gave him the paper and we had an A, and he was shocked. He said, how is it possible, because you didn't really listen, how is it possible to give that kind of paper? Have you worked in marketing before? And we said no. So he was shocked. Okay. And the second paper, he said, okay, the first one was by luck, but the second one you will fail. And the second one, we gave ourselves even more. Like some people maybe worked for 3 hours this paper. We worked on that paper 1 week. Just to give you an example of how hard we didn't want to fail. So we said, okay, you work for 3 hours. We need to work 1 week to be sure we don't give the satisfaction to that teacher to give us a bad grade. You just see, and we were shocked. And until today, because I have this teacher on LinkedIn, and until today, I'm like, okay, with my friends, it's been almost, 8 years ago. When we think about it, we're like, ooh, that teacher really didn't like, because we were the only black in the room, actually. And I don't know if he doubts our abilities or not, but it didn't seem right.
Right.
It didn't right. So I think it's the only time with my teacher that something like that happened.
Let's see. That's good to know that you... Oh, someone said the private schools are expensive, so you see less black people than universities. Yeah, that's true, because I have friends that were in private school growing up, and they were the only black people out here in the class. And actually, they had said that they weren't invited to the parties or anything like that, and they kind of had to like grow up with that, which is really interesting. And they both went to private school.
Wow.
I know. Let's see.
I don't see any questions, so I can only rely on you.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'm trying to kind of like look through. Oh my gosh, there's so many comments here, guys. I might have to like look at everything after too. Let's see. Oh, someone said look at TV, like there's no black people or family to be seen, which we kind of talked about. Oh, people love your French accent.
Oh, thank you, guys. That's nice.
Let's see if there are any other questions. Someone said, do you think you've seen more black Americans moving to France in recent years? In the 50s and 60s, there was a migration of some even prominent African Americans. Yeah, actually, I was reading Langston Hughes' autobiography, and he spent some time in Paris as well, for sure. But I mean, for me personally, I don't really have anything to gauge, like to to base it off of, just because I feel like the Black people that I know here are just like my friends and things like that. I can't really say that I've seen, I don't know. Do you have any insight there?
No, I have no insight. I would just say come to see by yourself. Because I remember my African American housemate when I was in South Carolina, actually. And I would love people, especially African American, to come and see by themselves what it is like to be in Paris or to be in France and to live and maybe discover another culture.
Oh, loving this friendship. This is the power of the African diaspora. I love that. So sweet. Someone asked an interesting question. Do you see equal opportunities to grow and succeed in the luxury sector in organizations? Which is interesting because the MBA program that I did out here was in luxury brand management. And the director at the time when I was there was African. And I mean, we traveled the world with this program. Like, we went to Hong Kong, we went to Dubai, we went to all of these different countries. And I personally always felt like, okay, I can succeed in this industry should I want to, but I think for sure, especially with my experience working out here, like I saw that there really weren't a lot of us in this industry. Do you know what I mean? And I can definitely say that I don't think that there are a lot of us in the luxury beauty industry anyways. I can't really speak to luxury fashion just because I haven't worked in that industry specifically. But I don't think that there are a lot of us. I would hope that I don't know, like this is such a hard question, because I can really only base it off of the experience that I personally have had. What I will say is that I do hope that this sector does become more diverse because I think it absolutely needs to, for sure. I think especially because a lot of these companies are actually trying to push diversity, as I kind of shared earlier. You know what I mean? And it's like, how can you really push a true diverse message if you don't have a diverse team behind it, So I guess that's kind of what I can say to that question. Sorry, I can't answer it fully because I don't have like a full view of the luxury industry. I can really only speak to what I've experienced, but that's kind of how I've seen it personally.
I don't know. Do you know Sephora? Do you have Sephora in the US?
Yep, we have Sephora in the United States. Yeah.
Okay. I like what Sephora did I think it's for France. They said that they would put more Black entrepreneurs in the beauty industry in highlight. And I think they say 20 Afro entrepreneurs, but I am not sure, And I was like, oh, that's a good thing to do. It's not only, white entrepreneurs or, white CEOs,
right,
but also Black brands.
Right. Someone asked, and you might know this, is there a place where you can find a list of Black businesses in Paris in general? Is there?
Yeah.
I haven't come across one. Is there?
Yes, you have Lobby Noir. You have Afro Initiative in French. You have a lot of you have Nofi, which is a media, and you have a lot of I can't remember you have Buy Black, but in French.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
maybe what I'll do is I'll get all of those from you and list them in the description of the video so that people have them to refer to. I think that's a good question. And someone said, do you find that Black experts support and befriend one another in Paris? I mean, totally. I mean, as I was sharing earlier, I was kind of a part of this Black American community, just like randomly, and we all completely supported each other. I'm actually really cool with them still. We were on Zoom all together during the quarantine and things like that. One actually lives in Senegal now, another got a job in Amsterdam, and another is living in the States. So yeah, I would definitely say that we do support each other. But okay, I feel like that. I feel like we covered a lot today, right? I think we got through a lot. Wow, we've been on here for an hour and a half. Is there anything else that you can think of that you might want to share, or?
Um, is not related to our topic really. I would just say that I hope that we will be so curious that we are willing to know um, all the Afro diaspora everywhere in the world, because there are a lot of things that are said on media.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe go to the Caribbean and discover the French Caribbean, maybe go to Paris and discover Little Africa, or even Ivory Coast, which is one of my favorite country in Africa, and discover, Abidjan or Senegal,
Mm-hmm.
and you would be surprised how beautiful these countries and how hospitable and
The people
wonderful these
are.
people are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like it's really interesting to learn about different cultures and the way that they treat people. Of course, people who look like you and things like that. I think it's really interesting just to kind of dive into all of these topics in the African diaspora as a whole, And I think in light of everything that's going on, it kind of makes you wonder like how things really are underneath the surface in certain countries and what's, really going on and things like that. So.
Yeah. So thank you, Tiffany, for having me and welcoming me here.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate having this conversation with you. And thank you, all of you who showed up. Like we had, almost 100 people on here for this live chat, which is awesome. So an awesome turnout. Thank you guys so much for your questions, your comments. After this, I'm going to really go through everything in the chat just because you guys were blowing it up. And I want to see what you guys were talking about. But thank you guys so much for holding space for us today. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. And we're excited about the future and change that will be made, hopefully, fingers crossed, within the Black community and just in all diverse communities as a whole, and kind of bringing diversity to all organizations and whatnot. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Keshia. It was awesome to chat with you, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.